FM Immortal have brought you a few videos already that talk to the concept of core positions in Football Manager. Today we're going to chat through our top 2 player traits for each of those positions. But before we get into the player traits, I think it's worth calling out a few things. 1. If you want to learn more about what each player trait does exactly, then we recommend heading over to FM Scout for this article, which we found very helpful last year and which holds true in FM23. We've linked a direct page in the description, so go check that out. 2. This video is, as often is the case at FM Immortal, based upon my own viewpoint and the experiences I've had in the game, so not necessarily total fact. Finally, you'll probably already have noticed this, but our positions are slightly oddly laid out here, and that is for a rather good reason. We've based our top 2 traits around 2 simple considerations. The traits of the top 3 core positions here will focus on minimising mistakes and ultimately seeing your side concede fewer goals. The bottom 5 will instead focus on creating and converting more chances. Starting with goalkeepers then, there are actually only 2 available traits unique to this position on the game, and they are avoids using weaker foot, which we think is actually a sensible one, and we are going to include it in our list, and the other is uses long throws to start counterattacks. Now this one, in the right hands and fitting the right tactic, can be very strong, but overall I would say it opens your defence up for mistakes and can leave you exposed if your goalkeeper's distribution attributes are not very strong. Instead, our second trait for this position is going to be gets crowd going, like Marek Rodak here has, because that usually comes hand in hand with very strong leadership and generally overall decent mental attributes, which are vital when you're pushing on for trophies in this game. Heading into centre-backs next, we have one get out of jail free card option, which is tries long range passes, and another sensible mistake reducing option of stays back at all times. When you are making your way up the leagues in Football Manager, you'll have some average to good centre-backs, but until you're at an elite level, I'd always recommend keeping your CB instructions really simple. And it is still my belief that ball-playing defenders tend to lead to costly errors. That said, the tries long-range passes trait means that they won't be blind to switching the play to the opposition flank, even if they are being pressed more closely by the opposition, and this can unlock space and relieve pressure on your defence overall, without the players taking too long on the ball, thinking about that ball playing option. Staying back at all times is simply going to help from a positional point of view. It's the counter action here of brings ball out of defence, which might see your centre-backs dribble into the opposition half more often, which, if I'm honest, I've just never been comfortable watching. Moving on to defensive midfield next then, and these traits can add some serious strength to your possession and clean sheet statistics. Firstly, we have comes deep to get ball, which is another alleviation on your centre-backs who may be facing a high press. It'll mean your defenders have more options if they are playing out of defence and cover if there's a surprise turnover to boot. The second trait I'd recommend in this position is, and it's one that I think works perfectly well for this, and it's dictates tempo. If you have a talismanic DM with a high work rate, composure and passing attributes, then this discipline is going to help you hold on to leads when you do need to slow the pace down a bit, and inversely help get the ball forwards quickly from a defensive position if you are chasing the game. It works particularly well on deep lying playmaker defensive roles, and yes, I think it does take the top 2 for me. Now we'll turn our attention to scoring more goals and firstly touch on how wing-back traits can be the unlockers. First up for a wing-back, it's gets forward whenever possible, which is another simple one, but makes all the difference when you're using wing-backs to hug the touchline and hit your target strikers from an overlap. You'll want this trait to pair with a wing-back with decent stamina, determination and work rate, alongside those crossing and passing stats too, but you may be surprised when you do find the full package as to how many assists can actually come from this position. On an incredibly similar note then, our second trait to look for in a wing-back is looks to pass rather than attempt to score, which is a rarer one, but essentially means when they get into a shooting position, often at an acute angle, they won't spurn their chances and instead will look to square it. Attacking fullbacks with finishing 11 or above were a bit OP, but in FM23 we've found that they're producing far fewer goals themselves, so instead our recommendation is to hone in on what makes a great assist machine, and that's why we're suggesting to look out for these two traits. Just look at Taylan Bullett's record. Into centre midfield next, and our absolute favourite player trait of FM23 to kick us off, it's tries killer balls often. Now this essentially seems to mean that they'll thread lofted through balls to the advancing forwards, sometimes 2 or 3 times in a game, and more often than not this will lead to either a direct or indirect goal being converted. It takes a player with very good vision, passing and technique to execute, but it's a fairly common trait nonetheless. It's not a bad one to have in any position, realistically. Our centre midfielder Oliveira, a new gen that came into play around 6 seasons into our Valencia save, has been a consistent provider of absolute worldy passes, with this trait to thank for. The next CM trait though that we will look at is arrives late in opposition box. This one means that there'll be an extra man in that 18-yard box when your strikers are forced to dribble out wide, or if your wingers are looking for an opportunity to square it. It works very well with a Metsala role. For instance, check out this goal from another recent video of ours from Lys Melou, scoring this beauty. Into attacking midfield next, and I'm going to copy one from the centre midfielders and maintain that tries killer balls often is the best for your advanced playmakers as much as it is for your deeper lying ones. Sorry if that's a bit of a cop-out, but I truly believe it's one of the more overpowered traits on the game. What I will add to this though is tries 1-2s. So as the second trait, 1-2s in a higher tempo tactic will create you pockets of space and gain you ground on even the tightest of defences, if you have the players with the right passing and attacking movement to play them off. We've been rocking this formation with a Metsala and deep-lying playmaker in midfield in recent seasons and are seeing dividends being paid by the two traits specifically, with loads of goals coming from midfield. Our penultimate core position then is wing forwards, and this is where finishing really comes into the frame. The first trait we're going to look at here is places shots, which essentially means they'll look to put the ball in the far corner or far edge of the goal when faced with a shooting opportunity. This works best in wide positions as the powered drives tend to get saved, particularly in those bigger matches against world-class goalies, and I can't tell you the amount of times I've seen chances fired high and wide from my wing forwards before I opted to scout this trait. Partnering the places shot trait then, we're going to have curls ball as the second, and I think that this can result in some Iron Robin-esque beauties going in, with inverted wingers finding the top corners on their best foot. Take Brais Mendes as the example here. He has both of these traits and his left foot could peel a Satsuma. It's absolutely glorious. Last but not least, we arrive at centre forwards, and the two traits I have found that lead to the most goals from this position are tries first time shots, which I've actually already talked about in another video recently where we said what works or didn't work in the FM23 meta, and combining this trait with a deep lying playmaker who tries killer balls often was, in my humble opinion, a combo that yields the best return of any in the game. Then our second recommendation and our second trait for the final position is likes to round the keeper, which, if you've got a reasonable dribbling and composure striker in play, you will see your strikers score far more one-on-ones, and this is particularly good when you have a pacey advanced forward in your tactic. This was our 23rd video about FM23. Isn't that something? Probably. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this one, guys, and as always, do let us know down in the comments if you think we've missed anything out, or if you've got anything else to add. We're always looking to improve and learn from this brilliant FM community. Do hit that subscribe button if you want to see more of the same, and until next time, folks, adios.